Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging, well, headfirst into a problem that, for literally millions across India, has become this terrifying, utterly predictable annual ritual.
It really has.
You know the story. It's monsoon season, the skies open up, and almost instantly, it's a depressingly familiar scene unfolding across our major cities.
Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore.
Exactly. We're talking about places like Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, these economic powerhouses, true engines of progress. But then you see the images plastered everywhere, submerged vehicles, utterly disrupted lives, entire neighborhoods underwater.
Economic chaos, really. Grinding everything to a halt.
It's far from just inconvenient puddles, isn't it? We're talking about vast urban centers, home to tens of millions, brought completely to their knees by what should be life-giving rain. And the question that echoes through those waterlogged streets every single year, frustratingly, infuriatingly, is always the same. Why? Why does this keep happening? Why do our cities keep drowning?
It's a question that indeed perplexes and infuriates in equal measure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because for all our leaps in technology, for all the rapid advancements that define modern India, our urban centers appear, well, trapped in this perpetual cycle of inundation.
Absolutely trapped.
So today, our mission, our deep dive, is to meticulously dissect India's stormwater crisis. We're going to unpack, layer by layer, why these cities flood with such devastating regularity.
Okay.
What fundamental issues are preventing the implementation of truly effective, lasting solutions? And perhaps most crucially, what desperately needs to happen to finally break this pervasive cycle of urban drowning?
Right. Break the cycle.
We're not just scratching the surface here. We're going to delve into the intricate technical and systemic layers that often get overlooked, giving you, hopefully, a shortcut to being truly well-informed on this critical, life-altering issue.
Okay, so let's really unpack this, because to genuinely grasp why our cities seem to be quite literally drowning in concrete, we first need to establish a foundational understanding. What exactly is stormwater management, or SWM?
Right, the basics.
In its simplest, most fundamental terms, SWM is the systematic process by which a city collects, conveys, stores, and eventually treats precipitation, predominantly rainwater. But here's the crucial insight, and it's one we often forget. Effective SWM is really about mimicking nature, about understanding the natural hydrological process.
Precisely. Mimicking nature. Think about how this works in an undisturbed natural landscape, say a forest, a vast grassland, or just an open field. When rain falls there, a significant portion of that water, often as much as 40 to 50%, actually infiltrates the ground.
It soaks in.
It slowly seeps in, replenishing our vital groundwater tables, which are so crucial for our wells and boreholes,
Absolutely crucial.
A smaller portion, perhaps 30 to 40%, evaporates, returning to the atmosphere as part of the natural water cycle. And the rest, maybe only 10 to 20%, becomes surface runoff.
Okay, only 10, 20%.
But here's the key difference from our cities. In nature, this runoff moves slowly. It meanders, it disperses, gradually making its way into natural drainage channels like streams, rivers, and interconnected lake systems. It's a gentle, patient process.
Designed by nature, basically.
Exactly. Designed by millennia of natural evolution.
And the core objective of modern, effective stormwater management is to mimic this natural process as closely as possible. It's about controlling that runoff, preventing it from overwhelming our infrastructure, our homes, our businesses, and causing, well, catastrophic damage.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That foundational understanding that we are essentially trying to replicate what nature does naturally is absolutely crucial for grasping the true severity of the urban challenge we face in India.
It really is.
Because what we're witnessing today is a profound destructive clash between this natural hydrology and the explosive, often unregulated urbanization that has swept across our nation.
And that's where the problem truly begins to manifest itself. India is undergoing an unprecedented and, quite frankly, relentless transformation of its land. We are seeing vast stretches of what used to be green, permeable land.
Land that could absorb water.
Precisely. Whether it was agricultural fields that could soak up water, or forests, or vital grasslands being systematically converted into immense areas of impervious concrete.
Impervious meaning water can't get through.
Exactly. We're talking about the dizzying proliferation of massive multi-story buildings, sprawling networks of roads that crisscross every direction, vast paved parking lots, and cemented footpaths that line every single street, every lane.
Everywhere you look.
This drastic, rapid, and widespread change in land use has a direct, severe, and measurable impact on the hydrological cycle, fundamentally altering how water interacts with the urban landscape.
It's astonishing when you quantify this change. We talk about how in a natural forest, perhaps only 10 to 20 millimeters of 100 millimeters of rain becomes runoff. But what's the immediate stark contrast when that same 100 millimeters of rain falls on a fully concretized area, say an urban street, a large building complex, or a paved industrial zone?
The difference is absolutely dramatic. On a fully concretized area, upwards of 80 to 90 millimeters of that same rainfall becomes immediate surface runoff.
80 to 90%.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has virtually nowhere to go, nowhere to infiltrate naturally. This dramatically reduces the natural absorption and infiltration that would normally occur,
Right.
leading to a vastly increased volume and, crucially, a vastly increased velocity of runoff.
So more water moving faster.
Exactly. To use a simple analogy, imagine holding a sponge under a running tap. It absorbs a lot of water slowly.
Okay.
Now imagine holding a polished, non-absorbent tile floor under that same tap. The water just races across it, accumulating rapidly and looking for the path of least resistance.
Makes sense.
Natural land is the sponge designed to manage water. Our concretized cities are the polished tile floor, actively repelling and concentrating water. That's the fundamental disastrous shift we've engineered.
And it's not just the sheer volume and speed of this water that's problematic. It's what that water carries with it, creating a severe public health crisis.
Yes, the combined systems issue.
A critical historical design flaw in the infrastructure of most Indian cities, particularly the older, more established ones, is the widespread lack of separate storm and sewer lines. This means we have what are called combined systems.
Where rainwater and wastewater often flew through the same pipes.
Exactly.
And the consequences are dire, especially during monsoon season. Our wastewater treatment plants, which are already often operating beyond capacity, become completely inundated.
Overwhelmed.
Totally. They're flooded not just with the daily sewage, but with a massive, uncontrollable surge of stormwater. When this happens, these plants simply cannot cope, and the result is what's known as sewage overflow.
Which sounds awful.
It is awful. This isn't just an abstract concept. It's the grim, unhygienic reality of raw sewage, untreated human waste backing up directly into our streets, our homes, our businesses.
Into people's houses.
Yes, and tragically, into the natural water bodies, lakes, rivers, ponds that are already struggling under immense pollution loads. This is far more than a mere inconvenience or an aesthetic problem.
Yo, it's health.
It constitutes a severe, immediate public health hazard, actively spreading a cocktail of dangerous pathogens and pollutants. Public health agencies globally, including the WHO, have consistently highlighted the predictable post-flood surge in waterborne diseases.
Like cholera, typhoid.
Exactly. We're talking about cholera, typhoid, acute diarrheal diseases, and leptospirosis, all directly linked to exposure to contaminated water. And with stagnant contaminated water creating ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes.
Oh, right. Dengue, malaria.
We also see a significant and immediate rise in vector-borne diseases like dengue, malaria, and chikungunya. This is a recurring, preventable public health crisis that explodes with every monsoon, particularly impacting the most vulnerable populations.
Those in informal settlements, often.
Precisely. Those with inadequate sanitation to begin with.
As if that were enough, compounding these issues is the deliberate, systematic destruction of natural drainage paths that our cities once relied upon. Chennai, a major metropolitan city in the south, serves as a stark, almost textbook example of this problem.
Chennai's floods are infamous.
We've witnessed rampant, often illegal construction directly encroaching upon and blocking what used to be vital natural drainage paths, local channels known as rahakalus or storm drains, and even more egregiously, vital natural water bodies like lakes and ponds.
Historically, these water bodies, these interconnected lakes, tanks, and channels, were not merely scenic features on a map. They were intelligently designed as natural detention and retention ponds.
They held the water back.
Exactly. They served a crucial, ingenious function in buffering flood peaks, acting like sponges in reservoirs. During periods of heavy rainfall, they would absorb excess water, effectively storing it, and then slowly release it back into the ground or downstream channels as water levels receded. They were natural shock absorbers for the urban landscape.
Smart design.
Very. But what has tragically happened across many Indian cities is their systematic destruction. They've been filled in, concreted over, and built upon sometimes entirely.
Built right on top of old lakes.
Yes. We now have entire housing colonies, massive IT parks, and sprawling commercial complexes standing precisely where lakes once provided critical flood protection. This goes far beyond mere poor planning or negligence.
It sounds deliberate.
It often is. It's about the active, conscious, deliberate destruction of the region's inherent hydrology, fundamentally altering and disrupting how water moves across the land, leaving cities defenseless against rainfall.
The numbers truly paint a grim, undeniable picture, illustrating the sheer scale and economic toll of this crisis across the nation. Studies from reputable organizations like the National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA, reveal a staggering statistic.
What did they find?
Over 70% of Indian cities either completely lack formal engineered stormwater drainage networks, or they possess systems that are woefully inadequate, woefully outdated for their current population densities, and importantly, the changing rainfall patterns.
70%. That's huge. And inadequate for current needs, let alone future climate change impacts.
Exactly.
And even in the minority of cities where these networks do exist, they are very often designed for historical rainfall intensities based on data from decades ago, perhaps from the 1970s or 80s.
Not for today's storms.
They simply are not equipped to handle the increased frequency, duration, and intensity of the extreme weather events that we are now experiencing due to global climate change. This fundamental mismatch between outdated design and current climatic realities creates an inherent, almost catastrophic vulnerability.
And the cost, the economic impact.
The economic toll, as you might well imagine, is immense, truly staggering. Estimates from various government bodies and independent research institutions place flood-related damage in India at an average of 20,000 to 30,000 crore annually.
20 to 30,000 crore every year.
Every single year. To give that some context for a global audience, that's roughly equivalent to 2.5 to 3.5 billion US dollars annually.
That's billions of dollars just washed away, and those costs break down into tangible, immediate, direct infrastructure damage: roads washed away, railway lines submerged, buildings collapsing, widespread power outages that can last for days.
And that's just the direct stuff.
Right. Then you have the broader, more insidious economic impacts. We're talking about massive lost productivity across countless industries, from IT to manufacturing, severely disrupted supply chains that ripple across the entire economy,
Affecting everyone.
and significant property destruction for countless individuals and small businesses. And tragically, these official figures often don't even fully account for the uncounted indirect costs.
The human cost.
Exactly. The psychological impact on those who lose everything, the prolonged displacement of families, the closure of schools impacting education, and the long-term closure of small businesses that simply cannot recover from repeated inundation. It's a truly devastating, financially crippling, and emotionally draining cycle.
So given that the problem is so glaringly evident and the consequences so severe and consistently tragic, why aren't these issues being addressed with the urgency, the comprehensive approach, and the sustained political will that they so desperately demand?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. The root causes are deeply embedded in our urban governance structures, our planning paradigms, and our overall development approach. It's a systemic failure, not just a series of unfortunate events.
And one of the primary culprits, the fundamental flaw, is a severe and pervasive lack of integrated city-level planning. Many Indian cities, even major metros, simply operate without comprehensive digitized drainage master plans that clearly map out the entire hydrological network.
No master plan.
Essentially, yes. This means our drainage systems are often an afterthought, a reactive, fragmented patchwork of ad hoc solutions to immediate, localized problems.
Band-aid solutions.
Right. Rather than a cohesive, strategically planned network designed for future urban growth and, crucially, for the escalating realities of climate change.
This piecemeal approach has profoundly negative consequences. It means that new developments, whether they are massive housing projects, sprawling commercial complexes, or industrial zones, are frequently approved and constructed without any clear understanding or even a basic assessment of their cumulative impact on the city's overall drainage system.
No big picture view.
None. There's no overarching strategy, no long-term vision, no scientific foresight guiding the urban expansion. And this very absence of a comprehensive master plan directly enables the rampant encroachment on vital water bodies and natural drainage channels.
Which we talked about earlier with Chennai.
Exactly. Lakes, which we discussed, were once critical components of a city's hydrological balance, are brazenly reduced to construction sites. Natural drains, often locally known as nalas or rasha kaluves in different parts of India, are systematically choked with plastic waste, construction debris, and garbage.
Or just built over.
Or worse still, built over entirely with concrete structures.
What's truly infuriating is that this isn't merely about negligence or poor foresight, though those play a part. This encroachment is often a deliberate act driven by powerful profit motives.
The land mafia issue.
Unscrupulous builders and what are commonly referred to as land mafias identify these unproductive water bodies and natural drains as prime targets for illegal land acquisition and development. They brazenly fill them with debris, concrete over them, and then develop them for profit,
Completely disregarding the consequences.
completely disregarding and fundamentally disrupting the land's inherent hydrological functions. This short-term gain for a few leads directly to catastrophic flooding and public health crises for countless others in the surrounding areas.
Furthermore, we are confronted with widespread regulatory failures and consistently poor enforcement. Many Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns, which are currently experiencing the most rapid and often unchecked urbanization.
The smaller cities growing fast.
Yes, they either have incredibly outdated bylaws for stormwater management systems, or in some cases, completely non-existent ones.
Rules at all.
Sometimes, yes. And even where regulations do exist, the sheer lack of diligent implementation or outright corruption within municipal bodies and other relevant agencies is a pervasive and well-documented issue that cripples any attempt at proper urban planning.
So the rules aren't followed.
Often not. Permissions for massive construction projects are routinely granted, and developments proceed with little to no meaningful oversight on crucial environmental and drainage considerations. Building codes are frequently ignored. Environmental impact assessments, EIAs, are often superficial exercises, mere formalities.
Just ticking boxes.
Precisely. And accountability for any resulting failures, any resulting flooding, is virtually non-existent.
And then there's what I can only describe as a woeful, chronic lack of maintenance culture. Even if storm drains exist and haven't been actively encroached upon, they are often cleaned only superficially.
Right before the monsoon, maybe?
If you're lucky, sometimes only right before the monsoon if they're cleaned at all. This means that for the vast majority of the year, they're already completely clogged with plastic waste, silt, construction debris, and domestic garbage from the previous year.
Rendering them utterly useless when needed.
Utterly ineffective precisely when they're most desperately needed to carry away excess water. It's a cyclical problem where neglect guarantees failure.
This represents a systemic failure, one that stretches from long-term strategic planning all the way down to the day-to-day execution and upkeep of essential infrastructure. And it's compounded, unfortunately, by the unwitting public contribution through indiscriminate waste dumping.
People throwing trash in the drains.
Yes. The mindset, for many, often seems to be out of sight, out of mind. Until the floods hit, the streets become rivers, and the consequences become undeniable and devastating. This cycle of neglect means that the basic infrastructure specifically designed to manage stormwater fails repeatedly year after year, trapping cities in a monsoon-induced nightmare.
So we've thoroughly laid out the problem and its deep, complex roots. It's quite depressing, actually.
It is.
But here's the thing that often bewilders people. The ideal solution to India's stormwater crisis isn't some grand mystery, some top-secret engineering marvel. It's actually well known among urban planners, hydrologists, and environmental engineers worldwide.
The knowledge is there.
It involves a holistic, integrated approach. Robust, citywide integrated drainage planning coupled with extensive green infrastructure and what are known as sustainable urban drainage systems, or SUDS.
That's absolutely right. This integrated approach means meticulously mapped drainage networks that are interconnected, not fragmented, and specifically designed to handle projected rainfall intensity and volume, not just outdated historical averages.
Planning for the future.
It's about designing for the future climate, not the past. And alongside this, you have vital green infrastructure interventions. These include permeable pavements, which allow water to seep through into the ground rather than running off.
Like porous roads.
Exactly. Rain gardens, which are specifically designed to absorb and filter runoff. Bioswales, which are essentially vegetated channels that slow and clean stormwater as it moves. And critically, the preservation and restoration of natural green spaces.
Parks, wetlands.
Parks, wetlands, and even urban forests, all designed to allow water to infiltrate naturally rather than simply channeling it away rapidly. These diverse elements work in concert, mimicking nature's absorption capacity to manage water where it falls, reducing the burden on conventional drains.
So if these solutions are known, if the experts across the globe largely agree on what needs to be done, Why isn't this happening effectively across our Indian cities? Why are we still drowning every monsoon?
The implementation gap.
The answer, as you can probably guess, is multifaceted and incredibly complex, deeply rooted in institutional inertia, immense economic pressures, and challenging political realities that often prioritize short-term gains over long-term resilience.
A primary and significant challenge lies in what we call patchwork development. Indian cities haven't grown organically with foresight and integrated planning.
I just sprawled.
Exactly. Instead, they've typically expanded in disjointed incremental phases, often driven by immediate demand, and critically, almost always, without any unifying drainage strategy. Trying to retrofit a coherent, modern, and truly effective drainage system onto an already chaotic, densely built, and often illegally constructed urban fabric.
Sounds nearly impossible.
It's an enormous, immensely costly, and incredibly disruptive undertaking. Imagine trying to install a brand new integrated plumbing system with modern wastewater treatment and rainwater harvesting into an old dilapidated building where every single room has had ad hoc pipes and extensions added over decades.
Right, no original plan.
No overall blueprint. It's incredibly difficult, astronomically expensive, and deeply disruptive to the existing structure and its inhabitants.
Another significant barrier is the pervasive lack of clear accountability and institutional fragmentation. Stormwater management in India typically falls under the purview of multiple, often uncoordinated government departments, creating a bureaucratic labyrinth.
Too many cooks.
You might have the municipal corporation responsible for some drains, but also the Urban Development Authority, the Public Works Department, and even irrigation departments or pollution control boards, all with overlapping but unclear mandates.
This bureaucratic siloing invariably leads to what we call buck passing. Responsibility is shirked, duplicated efforts mean resources are wasted, and fragmented projects address only a small piece of the puzzle without considering the whole city's drainage system.
So no one owns the whole problem.
There's often no single entity, no clear authority that is ultimately responsible for the overall drainage, health, and flood resilience of the entire city.
Yeah.
So when the floods inevitably hit, as they do every year, it's very often a blame game among these various agencies,
Pointing fingers.
rather than a coordinated, effective response, or more importantly, a clear path to accountability for the failures. This lack of a unified command and control structure undermines any attempt at systematic improvement.
And we absolutely cannot overlook the powerful role of private developers who are truly driving much of India's rapid urban expansion.
Right, their role is huge.
They are often not adequately mandated or, crucially, incentivized to include comprehensive stormwater management solutions within their private layouts and sprawling projects. Their primary focus, understandably from a business perspective, is on maximizing built-up area and sales,
Profit over prevention.
often at the direct expense of proper drainage infrastructure that benefits the wider community.
That's a critical point that has massive ripple effects. What frequently happens is that these developers might build a rudimentary internal drainage system within their walled communities or industrial parks, but then they simply direct all the runoff from their massive concretized areas,
Which is a lot of water.
a huge volume of water, onto public roads or into already overburdened existing municipal systems. This effectively externalizes the problem, shifting the burden and the flood risk onto the public infrastructure and the surrounding, often less affluent communities.
Pushing the problem downstream.
Literally. Crucially, there's often no effective legal framework or the political will to enforce it that is robust enough to compel them to adopt sustainable, comprehensive drainage practices that align with the natural hydrology of the area. They build, sell, and move on, leaving the city to deal with the consequences of their hydrological disregard.
And amidst all this, we must, with extreme urgency, highlight the dire neglect of vulnerable communities. Urban poor settlements, often informal or slum-like, are almost entirely ignored when it comes to any form of urban planning and infrastructure development.
Including drainage. Completely overlooked.
Absolutely, unequivocally includes drainage. They are literally left out of the blueprint.
These communities are disproportionately impacted by urban flooding because they are often, by necessity, located in low-lying, inherently flood-prone areas or directly along natural drainage paths that have been encroached upon or filled in.
The most dangerous places.
Exactly. They fundamentally lack basic infrastructure, whether it's proper housing, sanitation, or critically drainage. Their plight is frequently not prioritized, either due to political expediency, as they may not be a large voting bloc, or simply a lack of resources and recognition from urban planners.
So they suffer the most.
This creates a deeply inequitable distribution of flood risk and its devastating consequences, with the poorest segments of society bearing the brunt of a systemic failure. When floods hit, it's these communities that are first and worst affected, their fragile lives and livelihoods swept away with devastating regularity.
Then there's the formidable, perhaps most challenging, hurdle of political will and investment. Think about the immense scale of what's required. Retrofitting modern storm drains, building massive new underground conduits, or creating new, properly engineered detention ponds in old, densely populated urban areas.
Huge, expensive projects.
It requires absolutely massive capital investment. We're talking billions upon billions of rupees, an astronomical sum.
And beyond the sheer cost, these projects often come with significant political risks that make them unappealing to elected officials. They can involve the potential displacement of existing residents for land acquisition, the demolition of existing structures,
Very unpopular moves.
and substantial prolonged disruption to daily life during construction. These are politically risky decisions that can lead to public backlash, and as a result, they are very often deferred indefinitely.
Kick down the road.
Politicians tend to favor less contentious, more immediately visible projects like new flyovers, grand statues, or beautification drives, which offer quick wins and immediate public approval,
Things people can see.
rather than the unseen underground work of drainage, which only becomes apparent when it fails. The political will to undertake such monumental, disruptive, yet absolutely necessary tasks is often conspicuously absent until a major disaster actually strikes, forcing the issue into the public consciousness through widespread suffering and economic loss.
It takes a catastrophe to get action.
It's a reactive rather than a proactive approach that costs lives and livelihoods.
The situation is undeniably dire, no doubt. But here's the crucial point. It is certainly not insurmountable. We actually know what needs to happen. The solutions are largely understood by experts.
We do know.
What's missing is the collective will, the sustained effort, and robust action from all stakeholders, from the highest levels of government down to individual citizens. There's a path forward.
Absolutely. First and foremost, robust legal reform is crucial, and it must be stringently enforced, not merely put on paper. We desperately need mandatory, legally binding stormwater management master plans for all cities in India with a population greater than 1 lakh.
100,000 people.
Yes, essentially cities with populations exceeding 100,000 people. These plans must be truly comprehensive, scientifically sound, publicly accessible, and crucially, regularly updated.
Not just shelf documents.
They cannot just be a bureaucratic document to tick a box for compliance. They need to be living blueprints that fully integrate land use planning with detailed hydrological mapping, understanding precisely how water moves and collects across the urban landscape.
Building on that, the central government needs to step up and provide powerful incentives. This could be done by directly tying funding, perhaps through existing large-scale urban development schemes like the Smart Cities Mission or the AMRU mission.
Linking money to action.
Directly to measurable performance on stormwater management, SWM metrics. Cities that demonstrate tangible, verifiable progress in implementing and maintaining effective drainage systems, accurately mapping their networks, and actually reducing flood incidents should receive priority funding and technical assistance.
Rewarding progress.
This approach incentivizes proactive measures and provides a measurable framework for accountability, something that, frankly, has been sorely lacking in urban governance. It shifts the paradigm from blame to progress.
And to make that progress truly data-driven, GIS-based drainage mapping must become mandatory and fully integrated into the planning process before any new road is laid, any new colony is approved, or any large-scale development is even conceptualized.
Map first, build later.
Exactly. We need accurate, digitized maps that clearly show not just the existing drainage channels, but also all natural water bodies, historical floodplains, and areas that are naturally flood-prone. This foundational data is absolutely essential for informed decision-making.
So planners know the risks.
It allows planners to truly understand the hydrological impact of proposed new constructions and to design appropriate mitigation measures from the outset, rather than building blindly and exacerbating existing problems or creating new ones. Imagine building a house without understanding its foundation. That's essentially what's happening without proper hydrological mapping.
Beyond official mandates and governmental action, public awareness campaigns are vital for fostering genuine behavioral change. Let's be honest, many citizens unknowingly contribute to the problem.
By littering, dumping waste.
By indiscriminately littering and dumping waste into drains and water bodies. This isn't always malicious. It's often a lack of awareness about the direct consequences. Educating people about the consequences of their actions, how a plastic bottle in a drain contributes to a flooded street, and the importance of responsible waste disposal is a long-term but absolutely essential effort.
It's about fostering a pervasive sense of civic responsibility towards public infrastructure and the environment, recognizing that everyone, from a resident to a large corporation, has a crucial role to play.
A shared responsibility.
Definitely. Finally, we need strong incentives for the widespread adoption of green infrastructure and sustainable urban drainage systems, SUDS. This means providing tangible benefits, like subsidies for things like green roofs on buildings that absorb rainwater.
Making it easier to do the right thing.
Yes, making rainwater harvesting systems truly mandatory in all new constructions, and actively pushing for retrofitting them in older ones, and promoting permeable pavements and bioswales in both public and private spaces.
Those sponge city ideas.
Exactly. These smaller, distributed interventions, often referred to as sponge city principles, can collectively make a massive difference. They increase water infiltration locally and significantly reduce peak runoff, effectively acting as micro-detention systems spread across the entire urban landscape, reducing the burden on the main drainage network. It's about designing cities that work with water, not against it.
This isn't just a technical engineering challenge or a problem for distant bureaucrats in air-conditioned offices. This is about you, your street, your safety, your health, your daily commute, your children's education.
It affects everyone.
When your city floods, as it so often does, it's a direct, painful consequence of decades of unchecked urban growth, profoundly short-sighted planning, and widespread neglect of fundamental environmental principles.
And the tragic story of Bangalore's 2022 floods is a perfect, almost too painful illustration of this exact paradox. A supposed tech hub, the global face of India's innovation, brought to its knees by rain that wasn't even record-breaking.
It was failure of planning, not precipitation. In the last few years, especially in 2022, India's IT capital, Bangalore, made international headlines, but not for groundbreaking tech innovation.
No, for the floods.
It was for the floods that paralyzed vast swaths of the city. In affluent areas like Whitefield and Sarjapur, multi-core villas, some costing millions of US dollars, were submerged. Cars floated down what used to be roads.
Unbelievable scenes.
Major IT offices and global corporations were forced to shut down for days, costing millions in lost productivity. The city's gleaming image, its hard-earned reputation as a progressive hub, was undeniably tarnished by waterlogged streets and desperate residents being ferried by tractors.
And here's the truly sobering aspect. It didn't take a record-breaking cyclone, a once-in-a-century deluge, to do this. It was just 129 millimeters of rainfall over a relatively short period.
Not that unusual for Bangalore.
Not at all. In a city that's generally designed to handle over 200 millimeters during typical monsoons, and has historically seen far heavier downpours without such widespread, devastating chaos. The problem wasn't merely the rain, it was the fundamentally altered landscape. The land had been systematically stripped of its ability to cope.
These specific flooded zones, particularly in areas like Sarjapur and Mahadevapura, used to be a vibrant, interconnected network of agricultural fields, open spaces, and cascading lake systems. These natural systems were incredibly effective at managing rainfall.
Nature's drainage.
But developers, with unchecked ambition and often with little regard for environmental regulations, systematically flattened these natural contours. They filled in vital lakes, concreted over open fields, and built massive gated communities, luxury apartments, and sprawling IT parks right over traditional Rashakalups.
Those natural storm drains.
Exactly. The natural storm drains that historically carried excess water between these lakes. There was absolutely no stormwater detention built in, no infiltration zones, no scientific runoff analysis integrated into these development plans whatsoever. It was development blind to hydrology.
The statistics from research by institutions like the Indian Institute of Science are staggering and heartbreaking. Bangalore has seen 182 lakes disappear since the 1970s, utterly erased from the landscape.
182 lakes gone.
Its Rahakalus, the traditional stormwater channels designed to carry excess water between these now vanished lakes, are either entirely choked with garbage and construction debris, rendering them useless, or, even more disturbingly, built over entirely.
Built over.
Can you believe one major IT park in the Mahadevapura zone even used a concrete slab above a critical stormwater drain as its main driveway, effectively creating a massive bottleneck for water flow right at a crucial point?
That's madness.
With vast stretches of impervious concrete roads and paved compounds across these newly developed zones, The immense volume of water had absolutely nowhere to go. It rushed at high velocity into the lowest-lying areas, ironically, often precisely the same natural depressions where water historically used to pool and be absorbed.
But which are now filled with houses.
Exactly. Densely built with expensive properties, transforming natural flood buffers into disaster zones.
The estimated economic loss from just those few days of flooding in Bangalore was over 225 crore, roughly 27 million US dollars.
Just a few days. $27 million.
This includes direct infrastructure recovery costs, massive lost work hours for businesses that simply couldn't operate, severe property destruction for residents who saw their homes and possessions ruined, and the long-term impact on the city's global reputation as a reliable business hub.
And the accountability.
Tragically, despite the public outcry, despite the clear evidence of systemic failure, accountability for these catastrophic failures has been minimal. There have been few, if any, substantial repercussions for the responsible parties.
A senior BBMP, the Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagara Palike, Bangalore's municipal corporation official, reflecting on the crisis, was candidly quoted in the Hindi saying, "The city is urbanizing faster than we can plan. Drainage plans are still paper-based, fragmented.
Paper-based, in a tech hub.
We haven't mapped water pathways fully, nor do we have the resources or the authority to consistently clear encroachments." That statement itself is a profound indictment of the status quo.
Wow. That powerful quote, Bangalore didn't flood because of the rain, it flooded because we deleted the land's memory of where water belongs, truly encapsulates the core tragic truth of the problem across India.
Deleting the land's memory, that's chillingly accurate.
Our cities have systematically, consciously, and often illegally erased their natural defenses against water, building over the very features that kept them safe for centuries. This isn't an act of nature. It's a consequence of human choices.
We encourage you, our listeners, to be an active part of the solution. Become deeply informed about these issues in your own cities. Ask hard questions of your local representatives.
You'll stay silent.
Share your stories. Send photos of blocked drains or clearly encroached water bodies in your cities. Visual evidence can be powerful. Use social media to amplify these issues, making them visible to a wider audience.
Put the pressure on.
Write to your local corporators, your MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, and your MPs, members of Parliament. Let your elected representatives know unequivocally that robust, resilient stormwater management and scientifically sound urban planning are a priority for you, your family, and your community.
Because until we collectively demand better, until we mandate and implement scientific, integrated stormwater management based on a deep understanding and respect for natural hydrology, our cities will continue to drown in concrete. It's time for a fundamental paradigm shift in how we build, how we plan, and how we live with water.
Join us next time as we explore a truly fascinating possibility. Could traditional Indian water systems, those ancient stepwells, cascading tanks, and interconnected ponds, hold forgotten keys to solving modern urban floods?
Ancient wisdom for modern problems sounds fascinating.
We'll delve into the ingenious wisdom of indigenous water management practices and see what profound lessons they offer for our concretized cities today.